renting versus buying. I've got an incredible panel, as always. I'm good at curating panels. So panelists, please, can you come up? Jade and Nadine, my incredible panelists, can you come down? Give them a round of applause, please, guys. Thank you so much. How are you both?
Good, thank you. So happy to be here.
I'm excited to have you both. So before we get into the questions, tell us a little bit about yourselves, both of you. Start with you, Nadine.
Okay, shall I go first? Yeah? So I'm Nadine. I got onto the property ladder in 2020, the week that the world went into lockdown. So I was a pandemic renovator, was desperately seeking inspiration for this renovation online, and noticed that there wasn't much visibility with just black couples in that space. It's funny, even in 2020, the home and renovation space was very middle class and white. So I was like, I'm going to just document my thing, innit? And people seem to like it.
People seem to like it?
So yeah, that's what I've been doing all this time. I'm on Instagram just showing about like home renovations and from a very like millennial point of view.
Yes, we've loved it. My dad, for people who don't know, we've moved out of our house in London to Suffolk, and my dad is very big on DIY, so he's been creating his own content, his own DIY content.
Yeah,
so it's good to see yours as well. Jay, tell us about you.
Yes, so I started my whole property journey at the age of 22. So back in 2016, I bought my first flat. So a long time ago, but the market was still crazy then and it is now. And since then, I've just been documenting my journey. I've also been sharing tours, working with developers and agents to educate other people about how to buy their first homes and other homes. So I've been doing it quite a long time.
You have, and you've helped someone big buy their home, didn't you?
I did.
Let's get it out of the way now, Jay. Let's get it out of the way. Who was it?
Tion Wayne.
Tion Wayne, you did. And how was that journey?
That was a long journey. It took about 2 years. There was a lot of ups and downs. There was a lot of things going on in the media at the time. And it was, someone that was inexperienced at the time. So also, they didn't really know where their trajectory was going to go. And I kind of had to be, forward thinking in terms of privacy, what they'll need in the future. So there was a lot that went into it. But it was amazing nonetheless.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen Tion's bathroom and I'm envious.
Yeah.
I'm envious. I want Tion's bathroom.
It turned out really well.
Right, let's get into the panel now. I'm going to start with you, Nadine. Yeah. What should people consider when they're deciding between renting a property and buying? And we'll come to you after, Jade.
Okay, so I have quite an interesting journey on renting and buying, and I've done both. So I had a very comfortable home life situation. I was living at home well into my 20s, get on with my parents. I was under no real rush to do either. But I was kind of just aimlessly saving, and because I'm kind of disciplined with money, I wasn't really touching it. I was like, cool, maybe like one day I'll buy a house. Then met my partner, and we spoke about home ownership, and we were like, oh, that's something we want to do. And I'd done something that all of the elders were like, do not. We rented together.
Okay.
Yeah. My mum was like really against it. Like every one of that generation in my family were like so against it. They were like, you're throwing money down the bin, blah, blah. And it was literally the most beautiful 1.5 years of my relationship. Like living with him for the first time, so many firsts, with the comfort of knowing that we've not signed a deed to a property. I think renting just gave the relationship a chance to flourish, and then separately to him, it just gave me that chance to kind of like fly the nest in a way that didn't feel so pressured. So that worked for me where I was at, and also I had a time limit on how long I was renting. I knew that it wasn't indefinite. I was like, I definitely want to have affordable rent and then still be able to save something for this kind of potential home ownership goal. So I think, you kind of know, you'll kind of sense where you're at, depending on like how serious you are about your future plans.
Yeah.
For me, the property thing got really real for 2 reasons. And it's funny because Emmanuel and Teo mentioned these themes, and I was like nodding along. Firstly, I have a really unique experience where I help care for my nan. So I am very up close to being around an elderly person and what that looks like, getting old, and how comfortable your elderly life can be. My nan's elderly life is difficult, but it's comfortable. She was on the ladder, her place is very comfortable, she has got savings, and it helps a lot. So I was like, okay, definitely want to be secure. Like I'm seeing how this is helping her. Then, as Emmanuel said, I saw my mum stop working at 55. And that was because her mortgage was paid off. Literally, she paid off her mortgage and handed in her notice.
Wow.
She was like...
Mum said, I'm gone, I'm out, I'm done.
Yeah, and then I just saw this woman doing like horse riding and beekeeping. I was like, this needs to be me. So that's when I really had the penny drop moment about the future.
Yeah.
The future felt like tangible.
Yes.
And I think that's how you know when it's time, there's a time for both. And I think that penny has to drop for you to know like where you're sitting. That makes sense?
I love that. What about you, Jade?
I agree. For me, I had a completely different background. So my thing was straight out of uni, save and buy a house because I did not want to rent. That's because I had my dad, my family members, grandparents, like you said, completely against the idea of wasting my money, right? So my only option was to buy my first home. So lots of sacrifice, did that. Now, 7 years later, I'm kind of experiencing a renting period now, as I'm in a transition of selling my property and buying another one. And I just thought I kind of want to have a period of a bit of carefreeness, which is what you got to experience. So I say that to say it really does depend on where you're at. I think buying a home, I'm always the advocate of that. I've been the advocate for 7-8 years. However, I think a lot of people don't realize what really goes into it and how much of a long-term commitment it really is. But also, even before you get the keys, the work that has to go into getting to that point. And I think you kind of just need to be honest with what you can actually afford and where you are currently at. Yeah. And if you are in a position where you're comfortable at home and you don't need to go and rent or flee the nest, then enjoy that period and save and maximize that period that you're in. But at the same time, if you are somebody that needs to get out but you can't quite afford to buy, there could be an option of renting. I just think it's just something you really need to go into with a plan. Yeah, absolutely.
I agree. Just for anyone who wants to put in questions, so it's the same code as earlier. Some people couldn't scan it from the back, so the website is slido, slido.com, and you can put in that number and ask your questions and we'll pick at the end. Coming back to you now, Nadine, what are the costs that are associated with the renting process? So we're going to come to Jade in a second about the buying process, but what about renting? What should people consider? Are there things to save for? Or can you just go in there and just say, I'm going to leave tomorrow and I'm just going to rent?
Yeah, like now, from what I'm hearing from my friends that are renting, it's literally like people are bidding for rental properties. So you kind of have to save a deposit. Like normally deposits are 5 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, but now it's like 6, 7 weeks. This is London.
Some people are putting forward like 6 months rent to secure a place. Yeah.
So like renting, when you have those arguments with your mum, you're like, I'm moving out. Just remember
how much
just remember like you need a bit of money stacked even just to rent. So you need to have a deposit saved to rent, and then obviously as a tenant you will have not only your rent but more than likely bills as well. So, and council tax. I think a lot of people forget that.
Let's talk about council tax. That's a big one. I didn't even know it existed until my dad let me know. And
I think people forget that when you have a tenancy agreement, like there are certain things that legally the landlord is saying, like this person lives here, I just pay the mortgage. Like this is their responsibility. So TV license is on you, council tax is on you,
and your bills.
And everything. Your bills, exactly.
That's
like it's very rare that you're moving into a place that has like Wi-Fi. Like some of these new builds come with like Wi-Fi in the building, but you have to pay for that.
Wow.
Yes, I have that. So my current situation, so I'm living at a build to rent. So it's essentially a whole new industry where these huge developments are being built solely for rental purposes. And I find it a good experience now and probably great for some people if you do kind of want that ready-made feeling. So it's almost like you are moving into a new build house, but you're renting it. So like you said, with my internet, I pay £10 a month, but it's the same supply for the whole building. There's a gym, there's all of those things. So yeah, and with some build to rents as well, you don't actually have to have a deposit, but of course, everyone is running to them. So
yes, that's the thing. I think off the back of what you're saying, Nadine, about the bidding, I had a friend who went for a property that was up for rent for £2,000, but in order to get it, she had to bid for it, and then she managed to get it at something like £2,900 a month. that's the only way she was going to get it. She put in the maximum bid. She managed to find out what's the bid before me. She outdone them. They couldn't top it. And that's what they're paying almost $3,000 a month to be able to get that property. So there's a lot of bidding going on, as you mentioned.
It's actually crazy, but it's like, you know, I think when we talk about rent, we think, oh, like you kind of agonize at the costs. But then, you know, like you touched on this, you know, before, renting has, in a weird way, like being able to get out of a family home for a lot of us, and a lot of my close friends, has literally been like the making of them. It's literally been the thing that just like crystallized their adulthood, just even if it was 1 or 2 years renting. The costs and the commitment of renting can seem a bit crazy, but you know, we have to talk about personal life and these big life decisions as well. It's not just about investments. It can be about quality of life and where your headspace and emotional space is at as well. And I think like renting has been a refuge for a lot of people.
A lot of people
that I know.
And we have to remember that not everyone will be able to buy at certain times in life. So some people can probably buy quite young. I bought at 22, but most of the people around me did not. They're buying at 30, 28. So there's going to be stages for different things in life. And I don't think renting is necessarily bad, but I do think if you're going to, make sure you have a plan.
Yeah, have a plan to do that. Agreed. So we've touched on the renting costs. What about the buying costs, Jade?
The buying costs. So for the first time in 13 years, it has been officially recorded that buying a home has now become more expensive than renting in certain places, particularly the South. That's obviously to do with like mortgage rates, etc. So I say that to say that both things are expensive. That's the first thing. Second thing, when you're buying a home, you of course have to have a deposit. Now there are loads of different schemes where you can do 5% deposits, 10% deposits, etc. So if that sounds like something you'd be interested in, look into that. But of course you have your deposit, you have solicitor fees, you may have a mortgage broker fee if they require a payment, but I always suggest going with a free one because they do get paid by the bank that you go with. You have a valuation fee, which is when the bank sends someone over to the property you like to value it. Most of the time, you have to pay for that. Then you have fees along the journey, and then of course, when you move in, your bills are right there. So there is a lot that goes into it, furnishing it, if you're doing it up. And to be honest, I mean, I've owned my property for 7 years and you're always paying for something.
Always.
That's the truth.
Always.
You are.
Like,
you know,
I mean, my boiler is, I think it's on its last leg. It's so sad. No, honestly, it's so sad. Because if I have to replace my boiler,
a lot of money.
It is so much money. Like, am I going Jamaica next year? I don't know.
Tough questions are being asked now.
Heating or get warm in Jamaica, which
you know
one?
What I mean? I'm thinking Jamaica. I'm not gonna lie.
No, I agree. With speaking of boiler as well, there are some situations. So the flat that I purchased has a centralized heating system. So boiler issues, I had them, but I didn't have to pay for them. The council would pay. So
good. But there are a lot of fees associated with both processes that you both mentioned.
In everything,
so it's good to remember that. So I'm going to come back to you, Nadine. So for those who are looking to move in with someone else, right? And I think quite often we talk about the home ownership journey, it's always a solo one. More often, it's talking about you want to get in a property ladder. Or if you look at things like friends, right? They were living together. So for people looking to move with someone else, whether it's a partner, whether it's a friend or friends, what are the things that they should consider? I'm going to start with you, Nadine, and come to you, Jade.
All right, let's get into this tea because this was something that a lot of people that love me were a bit kind of like concerned about. I was buying with a boyfriend. And, you know, there was a lot of what if everything crumbles. And, like, I just have this approach to life where none of us have a crystal ball. And the more I'm getting into my 30s, like, life moves mad. Things happen that you just don't even expect. Breakups, makeups, people get ill. So it's like none of us know, what's going to happen. Yeah. So you kind of have to go off of instinct and how you feel like now, you know. So I felt very like comfortable buying with a boyfriend. However, our solicitor did flag when the house was all going through. She was like, how do you guys want to own this together? And I was like, what? And she was like, how do you want to own it? And she explained that there are basically 2 types of ways that we can own the house. So basically tenants in common or
joint.
Yeah, joint tenants, basically. So it's basically 2 ways that you can own a property. And she spoke to us very candidly about our situation as boyfriend, girlfriend, because when you're married, it's a bit different and I guess kind of legally easier where, you know, you're married, you're legally joint, so the house just becomes a marital asset.
Yeah.
Anyway, whereas we're boyfriend and girlfriend, she was like, you guys really need to think about this because you're not each other's next of kin. So basically, I'll quickly explain the difference. So joint tenants is essentially like you own the house almost as like one entity. So it's just like both of your names are down. A lot of people describe that as 50-50, but actually technically it's not. So what I mean by that is the death is the best way to explain what happens. So if one of you were to unfortunately pass away, the other one would just get the house, right? And then tenants in common is essentially that 50-50, that split. Essentially, you both own a share of the property in your own right. So what that means, that again, bringing up the unfortunate example of death, if one of you was to tragically pass away, the other person wouldn't automatically get the house.
So have a will.
Yeah, that was an awkward conversation to have with my partner, because when it was explained to me, I was like, I don't know if I die if I want you to have the house. Like, I was just like, I know that sounds cold, but I was like, well, I have to think of like our current situation. We're not married. You're not my next of kin. My next of kin is my mum. If I passed, maybe I want my family to benefit from the property, you know? And it felt really cold, but, you know, our solicitor was very like, these are good conversations and realistic conversations to have. So he was happy with that, had to draft my will. To talk about like, if I was to pass, what would happen. I can tell you guys what's in it. So essentially, obviously with a will, you can kind of put whatever you want in there. Not all of it's legally binded, but your executor of your will like fight for you for all of your wishes to be met if possible. So I basically said that if I was to pass away, I would allow my partner to have 12 months to grieve me in our home.
Okay. How kind. That's nice. 12 months to grieve you in your home. Okay, nice.
To wipe his tears and pack my belongings. So I've actually spoken directly to the executor and said, please allow him time in the property to grieve and sort himself out. Yep. After that, we've got to sell up, baby. And then, you know, and then basically my share goes to named members of my family. Okay. Because I'm still quite young, I'm not going to be updating my will all the time. So I did put a clause in there to say, however, if I was to pass and we have a child, then my share goes to my child in trust. So that feels really rambly and long, but essentially, if you are buying with someone, those are things to consider.
The way up.
Yeah.
That's really good input. What about you, Jade?
I would echo that. I did a reel on this and it went crazy because a lot of people don't have those conversations.
Yeah, they don't.
And one point that I made clear as well is like, also make sure that the partner you're buying with doesn't have any secret children or anything like that, because that's where things can get sticky if in the event of them passing away and you're thinking, oh, I'm going to get the rest, but actually they have
out of nowhere,
a child coming out of nowhere that's like, no, I actually have rights to this share in the property.
It's true.
So you just need to have those real conversations. Like buying a home, renting a home with a partner is a big deal. You're essentially merging your lives, merging your finances, merging a lot of different things, and you just, one, want to know that it's the right person, and two, know that you're both on the same page and you're both going into it level-headed and balanced, you know, and agreeing on everything.
Yeah, I think that is so cute what you both said. So on the Pennies Pounds podcast, we did an episode with Sadia and Amanda. So they are friends from Liverpool who bought their property together. So I want to ask you both, what are your thoughts? Because we mentioned couples, which is, you know, you're in a relationship, you buy with your partner. Great. What's your thoughts on buying with friends?
Okay, so for me, like I'm Caribbean, so
Same.
So I come from the culture where people did that. Yeah. You know, like a lot of like uncles bought with people and people done partner and put their money together. That's how a lot of those West Indian people from West London got them big houses in Notting Hill. Because
now,
times
are different.
But you know, where that's kind of a cultural tradition of like my background, it doesn't scare me. You do hear some horror stories, but I just think, like I said earlier, like anything in life, there's a risk with anything in life.
Yeah. Even buying yourself, there's a risk.
Exactly.
You don't know if you're going to be earning the same amount next year and you can't even afford it. So there's always going to be moving parts. I agree.
Agreed, yeah.
I feel with the whole buying with friends situation, correct, because that's how some of my grandparents bought, etc. But I think times are different. I think people are different now as well.
Actually.
I think then people were a lot more trustworthy. People really needed the home because people weren't renting to them, and it was like, we have to do this together or there's no other way. So I think know the friendship that you're investing in, know the person well, know their finances. You're actually going to have to sit down with your friend and speak about what they earn, their outgoings, can they afford their share of the mortgage and the bills, and you're going to have to really know, like, in detail, and you're also going to have to share that information with a friend. So know what you're actually comfortable with, sharing.
I completely agree. And I think the most common sort of dispute I've seen come up is when it's two single people that have bought together and then someone meets someone.
Okay.
That is when...
Yeah, the audience. If people clicking, I heard that.
Yeah, that's a really common one, where it's like when we bought together as friends, our lives and lifestyles and wants and futures were looking very similar. Now I've met someone and, there's that pressure over there and that emotional tug to do something with that person.
Yeah.
So I feel like, you have to have those conversations. And to be fair, sometimes you can talk these things to death, but
you never know.
you just never know.
You never know.
I think just speak about the scenarios, have a vague idea of the potentials. Yeah.
And then have an idea of what you do if anyone arose. Right, I'm on my last question before we go to the Q&A panel. So as I said earlier, please put questions in if you want a question, and we'll come to them in a second. But for both of you, what's one takeaway that you want to leave everyone here with? Start with you, Jade.
One.
What? Okay.
Oh, gosh, there's so many.
Okay, Jade, I'll give you 3. Go on. I'm being generous tonight.
No, I'll think of one. There's loads. Follow me online if you want more. But I would say have a plan. Honestly, know what you're getting yourself into. Buying a home is not impossible. It is very possible. People are doing it every day.
Yeah.
However, those people that are doing it, they either have money from their family or they have really sacrificed and planned ahead, and it hasn't just happened overnight. So understand that you do have to be flexible. With the way the market is now, many people have put pause on buying, and that's okay as long as you continue with your plan, use this time to save more, strategize more, research on locations, and then when the time is right, be ready, is what I'd say. I think that was loads in one, but yeah.
You gave us more than we asked for. I love that, though.
Way more.
Yeah, we needed that. Go on, Nadine.
I agree with everything that Jade has said, but I'm just going to be really biased and say, please consider a fixer-upper.
Absolutely.
Yeah, very specific, but...
that's what you did, right?
That's what I did.
Yes.
I bought a house that was broke down. It was broke down.
There's no way to put it, yeah.
We took it back to brick. We renovated it very slowly. I lived with eye eczema for a year because of all the dust. And it was tough. But like Jade said, there is sacrifice in most people's home ownership journey. And we chose that route because the property was affordable. The mortgage was affordable because it was affordable, just because this house needed so much work. So I would say consider a fixer-upper and consider a slow renovation, which is what we did, which is we bought the house, we had a little bit of money. With the money we had, we renovated what we could, and then we slowly done it room by room. So save a bit, do a room. Because all that time, the house is ours.
Yeah, exactly. There's no rush.
There's no rush. It wasn't... My house isn't even really finished now. Like, there's so many jobs that I can see.
My flat wasn't finished after 7 years, and I'm like, I'm selling it now.
Yeah, I'm done.
I've done way too much, and there's still more to do, but it's what it is.
Exactly.
It's an ongoing journey. It's always an ongoing job. Thank you so much, guys. I'm giving a round of applause, please.
Thanks, guys. Well
Thank
done.
you. So we've got some of your questions in here. I'm having a filter through because it's mixing with the other ones. But this one is for you, Jade. So for Jade, how were you able to buy a home at 22? Did you use any schemes?
How? Sacrificing no life, literally not going out, only spending on food and travel to work, and living in an uncomfortable situation is what pushed me to do it so young. So I left uni and didn't want to go back home to my mum because I felt grown up. So I ended up moving in with an aunt, and she welcomed me with open arms. It was amazing. It was comfortable. I wasn't paying her. And then very quickly that changed. As soon as I got a job, it was, right, you need to start paying your way. At the time, I felt like that was the worst thing in the world because it's like, you know what I'm trying to do. But now in hindsight, thank God she did that, because I was so uncomfortable that it forced me to really be serious about saving and moving, essentially. So that's kind of the background of it. Obviously, I was saving on and off for years throughout uni and college and stuff, always with a part-time job. And what was the second question?
And what did you use any schemes?
I didn't use any schemes because I didn't know about any schemes. To be honest with you, it was a long time ago, and schemes just weren't popping. No one was talking about them. It was very hush-hush. People that knew, and if you didn't know, you didn't know. But also, my advice on home ownership was coming from my parents. They didn't know about schemes. It was a traditional save, get a mortgage, buy a house, and buy something that you had to do work to at that. So that's what I did. I did try to use the Help to Buy ISA because it launched the year that I found my property, but I didn't have it long enough to even make any money. So I literally didn't have any help in hand in that way. But yeah, now would I have used a scheme? Not necessarily, unless I was dead set on living in a certain location, like London specifically, and I couldn't afford it.
That's interesting.
That's what I'd say.
Really interesting. Thank you for that. I think I want to come to you with this, Nadine. How much would you suggest to save for hidden fees, e.g. furnishing?
Ooh, okay. So this really weird thing happens when you get the keys to your house and you see it empty. Like the penny really drops. Like, I have to furnish this entire house. It's so funny, it didn't occur to me that I had I had a bed. It sounds silly, like you think you're going to think of that, but you're just so focused on getting the house.
Yeah.
So I would definitely say furnishing a house budget-wise, fully furnishing sofa, everything, you're probably going to need like a good 6K to begin with. What I would say, because interiors is my passion, I would say if you can, don't rush out to IKEA and buy everything in one go.
Yeah.
Especially if
Do
you...
it bit by bit.
Yeah,
don't.
IKEA is amazing if you're renting. Honestly, that's why everyone... If you're renting, IKEA is incredible. But if you're buying somewhere and you think you're going to be in that property a while, I would definitely say go for quality, save up, do a lot of research on...
Take your time as well.
Yeah, because
I did
100%.
stuff like that. Like when I first moved in, I was on a budget, and I did try to rush a lot of projects, and then your style changes, things that you like changes. So I agree, go room by room and budget and take your time.
Definitely, like, this is a bit boring, but things like your big purchases, like your sofa, your dining table, I would advise just try and go classic. There's so many trends out there, but something classic that's like a good shape, leather or wood or whatever is going to stand the test of time. You'll really care for it. That sort of thing. So I would say, like, to fully furnish a property, everyone's standards and taste is different, but 5-6K, perhaps. Like,
write down the numbers. Wow.
I mean, if you really want a good mattress, a good sofa's like $2,000.
Yeah.
So
I didn't know how much.
But
sofas
also
were,
look as well for sales and
it's true.
X-Display.
Facebook Marketplace.
Exactly. Facebook Marketplace is really good. A lot of X-Display stuff that when I first moved into my flat, I got because I was broke. But a lot of it was like unused. It was in great condition. Yeah. Amazing. It's 50% off. So shop
around it.
Yeah.
Right. Last question for you both then. How do you suggest choosing a location to buy in?
Well...
Okay, I'll go first.
Go for it.
Yeah. So we moved further out of London. We were both priced out of the areas that we're from, Peckham and Crystal Palace. We were like...
It's not going to happen.
We were so priced out, it was unbelievable. So my boyfriend, who's from Peckham, he was like, Croydon, and I was like, but we can afford to live there. And I was like, the type of property we want is there. Like, at the time when we were looking, so we were looking in 2019, it's like Croydon had all these beautiful Victorian terraced houses. Do you know what I mean? That were just like on the market and available. So I was like, if that's the property we want, like, we really should consider. So I took him around the area, and he was like, we took him 45 Street. He was like, reminds me of Peckham a bit. Like,
okay.
Yeah.
You felt home there?
Yeah, he felt at home. And I won him round. And now he's so happy that we did that. And weirdly, we're further out and now benefiting from all these fast trains. So it's kind of just like worked out really well, like 12 minutes to London Bridge. And like I got a straight train here.
Yeah, wow.
To St Pancras, So it's kind of like we thought that being in Zone 4 was going to be like the end of the world. So I would definitely say, like, don't get caught up over, like, what's the high street like, coffee shops, travel, like, no. Like, you need to think about your day-to-day life in the house. the property type. We wanted a Victorian house. So we went to the area where there were Victorian houses in our budget, and that just happened to be the borough of Croydon.
Nice.
So that's how I approached it.
Nice. Love that. What about you, Jade?
So I approached it based on this is what I can afford and this is what I'm going to have to deal with. And it's not my forever home. That was my thing. I was so young, I knew that was never going to be my forever home at 22. So for me, I am from London. I'm from Zone 2, Kensal Green, Northwest London. Prices, ridiculous. Like the flat I grew up in now is worth about 700-800K. Crazy.
Yeah.
My mum doesn't own it anymore. We were priced out.
Yeah.
So I had to think of, okay, where has great links into London? Because at the time I was working in central London, not too far from North London and East London where I have some family. And then I just had to be open. I wasn't open at first. I was very specific on certain areas in Essex, like Grays, just places that I was familiar with. But in hindsight now, when I look back and I look at what the places I was viewing, it made no sense because they were either tiny, they were overpriced, a lot of new builds that are like 4 years old now, people were trying to sell onto me for a premium and it wasn't worth that. So my advice is to honestly be open. Like many of us are from certain places in London, our family is there, this is what we know. But it's great to kind of branch out and open up your eyes. I moved to an area and family members and friends have moved there now since, and now I'm leaving. Right, exactly. But they never would have done that before because they didn't know about it.
All Peckham and them live near us.
Yeah. Wow, they come
honestly,
Peckham to you.
Yeah, like Julius has got all his. I feel like we started a trend, and like people have genuinely followed us.
And I think it just does take one or two, and then things start changing. The area becomes a bit more multicultural. You're more comfortable, or you start to see the things that you need. Get closer to you, but then you also realize that where you live is not actually where you're always going to be. So I was in London, so I moved to Essex, right? I was in London 3-4 times a week just for meetings and getting on with things. And like you said, fast trains, transport links, that is what's really important. As long as those things are there, you can honestly live anywhere. Of course, if you need to get to work, or if you're working from home, even better, like you have more options. And I just think you need to research an area like crazy. I was doing things like going online, looking at council notes to see what future plans were happening in those locations, in those boroughs and things like that, because then it tells you what's coming and what you could potentially benefit from if you buy there. Because yes, buying a home to live in, people say isn't an investment, but for me it has been an investment because now I'm selling it and I'm walking away with money I would not have made if I was renting somewhere or if I was just buying anywhere that didn't really have much growth. So researching the area is so important, but also be really open. You never know what you might find.
I love that. Thank you, both of you. This is an incredible panel. Before we go, where can people find you? Start with you, Nadine.
So I'm on Instagram, nads_Bacchus.
I'm on Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok, Jade Vanriel.
Thank you so much. Give them a round of applause, please, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you both.
Thank you, darling.
Thank you.
Thank you, love.